That's right. Now we have Dr. Brad Fulton. He's the Director of Research and Analytics for 10th Street. Dr. Brad, how's it going? How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you both?
We're doing great over here.
We are fresh off of vacation. There's no else I'd rather be than in Chattanooga here with FreightWaves Now. Brad, we're excited to chat with you about some of the recent trends within the freight market, especially how it's looking on the driver side. We're looking at retention. We're looking at potential freight recessions that we're going through right now. What's some of the latest that you're seeing on your side?
Well, I've been looking at some data from our exit survey. Surveys that go out to people who are leaving. And we looked at about just shy of 3,000 drivers and found some very interesting trends. We decided to look at industry tenure in the exit data to see, what are the different factors that sort of are most important to these different groups. For example, we looked at drivers who had been there, who had a less than 1 year industry experience, and found that actually training and family were really big factors, things that they talked a lot about. And so, oftentimes people's minds jump to pay into home time, but pay and home time, while that was a factor, that didn't seem to really come into play until after 1 year, 1 to 4 years. We sort of looked at that group, and pay and home sort of present itself. But less than 1 year industry experience, these are folks who are, the training and the family. They're new. They're trying to get a handle of what this is going to look like for them and their family. And I think looking at family is, a really, for these early folks, a really important and probably an overlooked factor. So.
I guess when you get that feedback, to me it sounds like maybe there hasn't been enough training on the job, and so these folks are saying, I don't exactly know what I'm doing here, and I'm not going to stick around. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, and the worry is not just that they're going to leave for another company, but leave the industry. And of course, we need to keep as many folks as we can. So yeah, really looking at and talking to the drivers one-on-one. Is there something you're not comfortable with? And then it's tricky. How do you address family issues? And what resources do you provide them to help with that? But that's a really important factor early on.
And Brad, that was going to be my next question. We're looking at those that are leaving not just the company, but the industry as well. When you're looking at that, I started thinking of different segments like construction, manufacturing, warehousing. Are these the type of roles that you're typically seeing some of these drivers go to?
Yeah, I mean, right now with there's a labor shortage, of course, we all know. And so they're sort of looking around and trying to see, well, what else could I be doing? And that's where that family issues, sort of press. They're looking at other industries and saying, not just the pay, and again, they're looking at that, but they're looking a lot at what I would call quality of life issues, I have training in psychology. That's sort of my background, and so I tend to look at things through a sort of a quality of life perspective, and that's sort of how I think a lot of these drivers, especially the newer ones, are sort of framing how they see things. So. Now, when you look at the older groups, the groups with more tenure in the industry, of course, things switch, right? Once you get to like 4 to 8 years out, you're okay. Now you're starting to get into pay. Pay and home time come into play at 1 and 4, but they really start to highlight 4 to 8 years, and then especially 8 to 15 years. And when I talk about pay, one thing that I like to discuss is not just pay in absolute terms, but think fairness. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, what are the drivers comparing to? Who are they comparing themselves to? So drivers at other companies, drivers with similar experience, and new drivers. And so one of the issues, of course, is everyone works to attract new drivers, right? But we don't want to do that and leave our experienced drivers sort of in the dust. We need to, every time we look at pay, we need to consider what older drivers especially see that, how they see that, and through a fairness sort of perspective. So.
When you've gotten this feedback, I'm curious if those that were surveyed, asked these questions, had any solutions that they'd like. I mean, of course, besides getting paid more, but like maybe a pay scale increase, or spending more time at home, less on the road, or having more learning options for on the job, maybe for those first year people. I'm curious what any of these solutions could be.
Yeah, I think, sort of all the above what you just said. What's interesting too is that sometimes when I read through these surveys and also through other things that I hear, pay and what I'll call work-life balance seem to sort of, the way I talk about it, they seem to wrap themselves around each other. So it's like, okay, I want enough pay so that I can spend some more time at home, so that I can spend time with my family. And so when you think about pay, another thing, again, pay fairness, but as you were talking about, think about work-life balance. And that's sort of a good sort of way to begin considering what types of solutions, innovative solutions we might be able to provide. But sometimes it's actually just recognition. So, I read a lot of comments about I remember one comment in particular that was talking about, I don't necessarily want to be recognized with pay. Sometimes I just want recognition, in front of the company. I want people to recognize the good work that I'm doing. So even just sort of that sort of non-compensation recognition can actually go a long way too. So.
And Brad, keeping on the line of pay, I'm interested to hear if there was any mention of pay transparency. Sometimes one of the things I hear from time to time is drivers want to know what increments are going to be paid or how much they're going to be paid, and being able to plan. I know this is going to vary from time to time on how far they drive, how much, what they haul, things like that, and which lanes they're running. But I can only imagine some drivers really trying to plan certain expenses around pay. But I've heard before that sometimes just the confusion around when they're going to get paid, how they're going to get paid, when it's going to come across can also cause some issues. Any talk about that?
Yeah, that's a big thing too. A lot of folks, a lot of carriers I've been talking to recently have dug into just exactly what you're talking about, transparency, and what I'd call pay education. One of the issues is we all know it's so complicated, right? And think about especially drivers, not necessarily new to the industry, but especially those, but also new to your company who are coming in. What experience have they had with other companies regarding their pay, and are they bringing on information about their pay that maybe they're assuming some things that's just not how it works with your company. It's different. And so there might be a misunderstanding or a misperception about how things work. And that actually can push on this idea that I was talking about, pay fairness. And so some of the some of the issues with pay fairness could just be because of misunderstandings and lack of transparency. And so if you sort of address that and you push the educational bit and you push the transparency bit, that can really help to improve some of that, to resolve some of those issues.
Dr. Brad Fulton, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do you happen to have any last pieces of advice or any last words on driver retention?
So important in America and for the American economy. And one thing that I like to push is for people to really start looking at driver quality of life. that's a hard job. And we need to really start asking questions about their quality of life and not just pay, but, work-life balance and family issues and all that, and really start to talk to them and to answer some of these questions.
Very well said.
So thank you.
So much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great call out there and a great point. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to having you on the show more often. Right now.